Hey guys, welcome back to another installment of A Minute with Drew. Today is a nice change of pace. I'm going to bring you some guitar news. Earlier today, on the day I'm filming this, Gibson released their Peter Frampton-Inspired Les Paul Custom. This new guitar is inspired by Frampton's famous Phoenix guitar that was featured on the cover of his album Frampton Come Alive, which featured such great songs as Show Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way. Come to think of it, as a collector of vinyl and actually really big fan of this album, I should really try to get my hands on it and add it to my collection. Little backstory between me and these songs. Baby I Love Your Way was actually one of the first pop rock songs I learned the chords to on piano. I had this massive fake book with over 1,000 pop and rock songs from the 50s through the 90s, and I used to play out of it all the time. I think I still have it too, so I should probably try to find it and play some stuff out of it because there's some great songs in there. Anyway, if you're looking to get a high caliber copy of the instrument that appeared on that album, again, Frampton Comes Alive, it'll only set you back a cool $7,000 or so. So if you're into that kind of thing, go ahead and check it out. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Gear Guys podcast. See you later. Hey guys, welcome back to the Gear Guys podcast. Today on the show, I have Zach DelVecchio, an entrepreneur and fantastic guitar player from Nashville, Tennessee. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me today.
Of course, man. Thanks for taking the time out of your surely busy schedule for this interview. Now, with all the different things you're a part of and things going on, I bet you're really busy normally, right?
Yeah, usually I'm pulling somewhere between 18 to 19-hour days.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Well, thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule.
Yeah.
Now, you said you 18, 19-hour days, you said?
Mm-hmm.
That is a bit of time. So what does what does a normal weekday look like for you?
So it's a kind of a hectic schedule, but it's fun. So I bounce between all of my businesses, usually handling meetings. Sometimes, a lot of the time, I'll be at the workshop. I have a wood shop right around the corner that I work out of. And so I'll be taking phone calls out front, and then in between, I'm in the back working on building guitars, or then I'll go out to other parts of the town, like Brentwood, where J Rocket Audio Designs is located. And I'll be working out there with the owner, Chris Van Tassel, on new product designs, marketing plans, handling all of their sales and infrastructure. So it's a balance. So for example, today I handled a call with Miss California, and then all of a sudden I'll go and switch into talking about Bucket Brigade delay circuit. And then I'll bounce around and work with a gold mining company. And then the next thing you know, I'm in the back, working on a fingerboard. So it's a very diverse day every time.
Yeah, I was looking at a lot of your stuff, and you have a lot of diverse companies you work with, man. I bet it's really crazy, hopping from one thing to the next and trying to get your mind straight on each one.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the time too, it's just figuring out proper partition of your brain capacity to bounce back and forth. So I try as best as I can. For example, I'll do an all tech work day where it's nothing but computer stuff, and then the next day I'll do nothing but guitar stuff. Or some days it's a hybrid of the two. The schedule's always changing. And so for example, tomorrow I'm going on the road. We have a show in Shreveport, Louisiana. So I'll be working out of the car all day through a hotspot, and then we'll play the show at night, and then I'll go back and forth. I have a tech team out of India for the last 5 years, so I've been managing those guys, and so I'll work all day through there, play the show at night, get back on around 11:30, and then I'll work until 3-4 in the morning with them.
Oh wow, that's a bit of a day. Now, how do you handle all these things at once? Like you said, 18, 19 hours a day, you work till 4 in the morning. I bet it gets a little bit stressful sometimes having to do all these different things,
It is. It's funny because a lot of it is just very much time management and being really, really organized with what I'm doing and making sure every, second of the day is allocated appropriately. But there's moments where, for example, all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and there's 40, 50 emails. And that's when you're like, oh no, oh God, it's going to be one of those kind of days. And then, all of a sudden, as you're working through one problem, you're like I said, you're debugging a website, or you're doing some, product development or something like that. Then all of a sudden there's another fire that comes out. So it's trying to manage being several different people all at the same time. And every one of these people, they look at you like you're just the individual. So it's a lot of the time it's managing customer and client expectation and executing to the speed they need. And then at the same time, trying to just make it so you're 100% seemingly undivided attention, but at the same time spreading that across, 13, 14 projects.
True. But I bet that can be a lot to handle. And like you were saying, like you solve one problem, all of a sudden 2 other fires start up.
Exactly. You send, for every email you send, there's always a response or there's a question. So it's just literally a never ending revolving cycle. But I have a good, management softwares and things like that. So I try to work down everything like one business or one client at a time. And then I'll try to focus as much time as I can. For example, I won't acknowledge anything from one person until I take care of all the ones for another. And it's never I usually always have a less than couple hour turnaround time. So I'm always very fast, but still trying for my own brain, my own mental capacity to just make sure everything I do is to the best of my abilities for that one person. And then I'll jump onto the next thing. And obviously you're texting people in responses and you're working, but I work in pretty much 5 different time zones every day. So it's just figuring out, okay, who am I talking to at Central Time that's not messing up with who's somebody in California, or, we have an interview in New York or New Jersey. And so just a lot of it too is just being very aware of where in the world I'm working with.
I didn't even think of that. Like the different time zones you have to work for. One time is like 3 hours ahead. One time is like 5 hours behind.
Oh yeah. Or some are 14 hours ahead and, and same thing, even observing different holidays and different days. So for example, it was just the Tamil New Year out in India. So all of a sudden, it's a regular Tuesday for us, but it's 2 days off over there. So it's a lot of time considerations and things like that, trying to manage it and make sure everything still moves according to plan, even when you're acknowledging all of these different dates and times.
True. Now, with normal people's like 8-9 hour jobs, they still sometimes find it difficult to separate work and home life. How do you go about separating like your work life from your like relaxing or your home life?
I'm in a really blessed situation, and I everybody always says that, but I genuinely enjoy everything I do. So it really doesn't ever feel like I'm truly, sometimes it's obviously like tedious. Like sometimes you just deal with those people that are just those people. But a lot of the time I'm very fortunate enough that what I do doesn't really feel like real work. So I don't mind it. That's like, for example, building guitars or doing product design or, marketing for guitar companies or pedal companies or consulting with, doing streamlined processes for an acoustic guitar company. It's fun stuff. So it's like, that's what I would have probably been doing even if I had the free time to do it. So for example, right now I'm working with a very high profile guitar player right now. And just for fun, I'm helping them get more of their album out there. They just released a new album. It just came out of Abbey Road. It's a very well-produced record. And so I'm just helping them for fun. My definition of fun is like, okay, well, let's work on your marketing. Let's figure out how to get exposure and what kind of always working and, always looking at opportunities and things like that. But, I have a girlfriend. And so I'm always trying to be very attentive to that, where as much as I like to be a machine, I realize like the rest of the world doesn't work on my schedule. So, he's the one among my friends in life that remind me to be a human being. So for example, I always make sure it's always, when it's time to spend time with friends, I make sure, my girlfriend, I make sure to spend 100% of my time being with them as opposed to just being in a room. Now, obviously some days are more tedious than others, but as a general whole, I try to just make it when I do one thing, that is what I'm as present as I possibly can be.
Okay, great. All right. So like you said, separating like your work from home life, spending all your time at work, and then when you're off, spending all your time with people you're hanging out with. Now, after a day of being pulled in all different directions for the various things you do, how do you wind down after a long day? Or like when you have to work like through the night, how do you keep yourself sane?
Yeah. I usually will do a couple things. I love to paint, and I do scrimshaw and other various forms of art. So I do a lot of that and a lot of creative design for my instruments, or, building out businesses for fun. I love starting businesses and projects.
Now, when you're thinking up new business ideas, is the first thing you go to is a musician-based idea, or what would help as musicians, or do you tend to think bigger than just musicians?
Both. It really depends. I rarely do things where, I'm not one of those people where, for example, if I can think of a better way to make a tissue for example. Like I spend my time all of a sudden trying to be a tissue manufacturer. A lot of what I do is in the wheelhouses of what I know, or things that make sense, or ultimately problems that I encounter, whether it's through people lamenting what an issue is, or having my own, gripes with certain aspects of things, and then coming up with a better solution. And because of my technology background, after being involved in numerous tech startups, I start to look at things slightly different. So, for example, I look at everything from a creative lens first, and then all of a sudden my brain immediately starts to go into, well, what are the mechanics behind that, or what can be simplified, or what errors or issues can be resolved with technology or automations or streamlining of a process. And so it really depends on what the issue is. So everything. So for example, one of the things I work with is an artist visa company called Artist Pass. It's a totally immigration law, but it's centered around music. So ultimately, most of what I do is creative based. And then there's aspects from the other world, so to speak. So I have another company called Indie Music Funding. That's an all music crowdfunding platform. But really at its bones, it's a financial crowdfunding platform. It's just geared towards a specific wheelhouse that I have more knowledge about. So usually I try to bring in things that I'm very comfortable with, or something that I know enough about that I can learn quickly, or something that I know enough about from a pain point of view that I can resolve. And then a lot of the time it's very similar to being in like a you hear it all the time with musicians, where all of a sudden you're called in because you know a friend of a friend who needs you for a band. It's the same thing. A lot of the time, a lot of the projects I get involved in are people that say, hey, I need something done. I don't know who to do it. I'm going to talk to Zach about this. Maybe he has an idea. And then oftentimes, if it's something that's like I get passionate about it, there's a real solution, and then there's a real solution where I can see dollars, so to speak, not at the end of it, then I'll often get myself involved, or my business involved, or my network, and things like that.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. But like your main focus, because I know you graduated from Berklee College of Music, so your big thing is music, right?
Yeah, correct. I went to the Musicians Institute and Berklee College of Music.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Well, everyone has what I like to call like a splinter, a major event that basically got into music, which, anything range from broke up with your first girlfriend to like write a song about it. What was your splinter that got you into music?
My dad always played guitar, in the sense that he owned a guitar. He'd play a couple licks, and he was very much a classic rock kid of this the 70s and of the 80s. So growing up, Zeppelin and the Stones and Van Halen, it was always in my house. My mom was a diehard Elvis fan. So I've always grew up around music, and my uncle's was a touring saxophonist. My grandpa, or my papa, he played at Carnegie Hall as a jazz pianist. So music was always around, but never in a true professional setting. And the silliest of all the things is the thing that made me see I need to play guitar was I was playing a video game of all things when I was probably 12 years old with my brother. And it was a war game, and Painted Black came on. And all of a sudden, like this, like boom moment came on. I heard that sitar, and I just said, whatever this thing is, like, I need to figure out what that was. And so all of a sudden I went back home, and I picked up my dad's acoustic and started messing around on it. And then all of a sudden I started saying, well, let me actually try to listen to them. And all of a sudden I saw he put on The Song Remains the Same, the movie from Madison Square Garden. And I saw Jimmy Page with the double neck guitar, smoking a cigarette with a dragon suit. And I said, whatever this is, like, I want the rest of my life to be that. It was like the coolest thing my 12-ish, 13-year-oldish brain could ever comprehend, was what I was witnessing on that. And then ever since then, there's not been a day in my life, and the last 13 years, where there's not been a guitar or the mention of something relating to that instrument.
That's really cool. That's a really cool little memory. Now, graduating from Berklee, was music the sole thing on your mind when you graduated, or did you kind of know you wanted to dip your toe in a bunch of different things?
No, it was actually a total accident. I wanted to go to school to be a session musician. I started playing guitar in 2007. And 2008, for some reason, I was never a mechanical person. My brother, he's an aerospace engineer. He was the mechanical person. He was good with his hands. I was not. I was an art kid 100% all the way through. And one day I saw Eddie Van Halen's guitar and I wanted to get one. And it was at the time when Fender in 2008 came out with those master built $25,000 Frankenstrats and said, well, can't afford that. But then all of a sudden I remembered reading that he built his guitar. And I said, well, if he could do it, why can't I? And all of a sudden that was like the first little mechanical bubble of getting the idea of the world, revolves around math and figures and structure. And so I started working on guitars and building guitars. And, almost all of my beer money in college, so to speak, was doing repairs out of my apartments, both in Hollywood and Boston. I was doing, 10, 20 repairs a week. All of a sudden that became a very big part of my life. And all of a sudden I started realizing, well, wait a minute, I'm not just a musician. I think I'm a luthier, or I want to be a luthier. And it was for lack of a better example, and with no disrespect to anything, it was almost like a little bit of a coming out moment. Because I remember sitting and talking to my dad saying, like, Dad, I don't think I'm a guitar player. Like, I think I identify as a guitar maker and a designer. And this is every day I'm sitting there doodling out drawings and designs and, oh, what if this part's on here? And what's the sound? And what's that going to do? And then talking about those random moments, I met my very first business partner at a pizza parlor in Boston at like 3 a.m. Coincidentally, she was a photographer from another college and she was good friends with my roommate. I bumped into her. We started talking about issues and complaining about, just usual things that college kids complain about. And all of a sudden, for some reason, we had this idea like, wow, we think we have like this little business idea. Needless to say, Emerson caught wind of it, which is the school she went to. They all of a sudden were a part of an accelerator program there. And we said, well, we knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about computers. I mean, nothing at all. And all of a sudden, Emerson gave us a bunch of money to start this business. And I was introduced to my very first mentor, Corey Stanford, and he's a brilliant entrepreneur and technology guy.
Okay, guys, we're going to go to a little break and hear from our sponsor, Novell, and we'll be back in a second. See ya. Here at Novell Global, we are the industry leader in fine jewelry craftsmanship. Our handcrafted and custom designed rings, meticulously crafted from the finest precious metals, are perfect for all of your needs, whether that be for an engagement, a wedding, or for everyday fashion. All of our rings are made in America and have been since 1988. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Again, I'm here with Zach DelVecchio, and we're just going to keep talking about his businesses and stuff. Now, the businesses you've owned or co-founded all seem to have a theme of helping musicians achieve their dreams of being a musician. For example, your consulting business, as well as indie music funding, which we were talking about earlier. I'm guessing you enjoy helping people get their feet off the ground in terms of starting or growing their career.
I've been a helpful person, but all of a sudden being around musicians all the time, you see such knowledge gaps of I just play my guitar and I don't know how to make any money with this thing. I just love it. And you hear that constantly among pretty much every musician for the most part. That's why most of them all have day jobs and things like that. And all of a sudden, once my brain kind of awoke to start thinking in these other ways, I realized, use that power for good. Be able to help connect with other musicians, be able to help people, just help people achieve their goals. Because life's not that complicated. People just make it complicated.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Now with your Rubber Arrow Consulting Company, is that also specially geared to musicians, or you guys do like any industry for that?
Yeah, that's any industry. I have a lot of music-based clients, but I work with everybody from a very well-known radio DJ on iHeartRadio, down to the Miss California organization, down to gold mining companies, anything really. And then obviously I'll work with companies like J Rocket, which I'm the head of sales and marketing for. I do consulting with various guitar makers, the whole gambit.
Okay, that's really interesting. And now, is it sort of a similar process you go through for all these guys of the different businesses as well as musicians?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I've noticed from blending between both worlds is business. You know, it really doesn't matter what the item is. Everything requires the same steps once you start looking at it from 1,000 feet perspective. So a lot of the time, it really doesn't matter whether, like I mentioned, an artist trying to get more listeners or a company trying to get more sales. You know, there's the same questions and same procedures that I run through from start to finish, everything from, you know, what's your foundation, build your foundation, to next questions of saying, well, where's your audience? How do you get that audience? How do you improve upon that? Where are your pain points? How do you alleviate those pain points? How do you exceed with showing your advantages as opposed to your disadvantages? A lot of that, you know, and I speak ambiguously because it is the same. You know, whether it's a band trying to say, how do I get a record deal, to, you know, how does a gold mining company, you know, start learning the rules of each particular industry.
Okay. Now, one of the hardest parts of starting any business is, like you said, growing your customer base to start out on. Now, what did you do to start bringing your first, 3, 4, 5 customers into your businesses?
Doing a really, really good job.
Oh,
that's the honest truth. You know, it's like a good restaurant. You know, if you go to a restaurant that really blows your mind, the first thing you do is you tell your friends, I just went to this place, you go there. And it's the same formula. You know, it's not any magic secret. It's doing what you said you're going to do in a very fast and efficient time, very coherently. You articulate everything you're going to do. You make sure everybody is satisfied. And if you do that, you always will get more work.
That makes a lot of sense. You need to have that high quality product first before you're getting any customers in. Now, is that your advice to other people that are starting up businesses? Just make sure you have a high quality product and the rest will basically come?
Yes and no. The rest will come if you set up a solid procedure for how that happens. You know, so for example, you know, whether for guitar services, for example, what I used to do when I was just doing it for, you know, for basically beer money, I would always find a couple people that I knew would have great word of mouth. I knew you just know the people that start talking. And so what I would do with those people, for example, is I'd set their stuff up for free. I would work with them for free because I knew if you give a little, you're going to get back. So for people like that, I would take particularly great care. I'd go above and beyond for them people. And if I treated one person well, chances are I'd get 2, 3 referrals from that person because you met their expectations. You surprised them with something as courteous as a, don't worry about it. You know, it's fine. I just, you know, it was a trust rod adjustment. Don't worry about it. But then all of a sudden they come in 2, 3 fold and you tell those people and you do the same procedure again. Now you charge a little bit. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're telling their people and now you're building up a referral network. Additionally, that then you start to do the other sides. You know, how do you build your foundation? You know what your branding is, you know what your audience is. And now how do you find that person? How do you find that customer base and then continue to evolve that? Then obviously you'll always meet, you know, nothing's ever perfect. You know, you'll meet customers that are difficult. You'll meet people that you just, no matter how right you are or how kind or courteous, some people are just and there's nothing you could do about that. All you could do is when you meet those people is you keep your head up high. You don't wallow in the mud with them. You let them have their thing and you let your reputation, even when stuff hits the fan, you still stand tall on that because the people that know and respect you and know what you're capable of, they're not going to listen to those other people. They might acknowledge, oh, it might have been a rough experience, but they're not going to be the dead in that firefight with that person. And next thing you know, you say something. In life in general, you, one, treat everybody with courtesy and respect always, but you also never know who other people know. You never know a person's full story, and you shouldn't have to step down just because a person is of that character. You know, you should always rise above them at all times.
Very true. And it's that whole squared thing as well. You know, one person you help, they'll tell 2 friends, and those 2 friends will tell 2 of their friends each. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Precisely.
Okay, great. Now let's talk about a couple of your businesses. Crowdfunding has become a very popular thing right now, and your platform, Indie Music Funding, looks to do that for musicians. Now, what was your inspiration for creating that platform? Was it just seeing a bunch of these crowdfunding websites and was like, hey, this for musicians would be kind of great?
Yes. And then to the same point, you know, musicians put all of their heart and soul into making music. You know, it's something that's so deeply personal And then ironically, you need the money to do so. And then all of a sudden you're next to some state-of-the-art charger or some knife that can slice through steel. And it's what's the correlation between these two? Music, you can raise money on all these other platforms, but there was never, it just, and music was an afterthought. It was just one of those, oh, well, I don't know where else to do this, so I'll do it here. On top of that, you have all these rules. So various platforms, without having to mention them, for example, if you try to raise $100 and you get to $99, the company takes the $99, or they sack you for 20% of the money you just raised. And all of a sudden, where are you? Where do you get left off? So we designed indie music funding with the idea that the musician can raise money at a flat 5%. They get you put $1 in, somebody donates $1, you get 95 cents immediately. They don't need money all the time, but when they need it, they actually need it for a right reason, and you need to get it to them faster than any other platform was currently capable of doing that. So by creating a market that's just musicians, it allows record labels to connect, A&R agents to connect. It allows a musician to raise money in a spot that's actually for them, and they can do it cheaper.
True. And yeah, true. That's a great point. Like a lot of these other crowdfunding companies aren't specifically built for the work musician in mind. And then another business venture of yours I want to talk about is what you mentioned before, exactly. Artist Pass, where you give visas to musicians and artists. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so this is a fascinating one. This is one of those classic examples like I was mentioning. So a person I went to school with, he calls me in the middle of the night because he was out in China, and a lot of his business is out overseas. I'm trying to plan these tours right now. I just keep getting sacked by all these legal fees. It's so expensive to bring artists into the States, to retain them in the States. So for example, you you work in China and all of a sudden you want to go cut a record in LA. Well, now you are paying, 10, 20 grand to go stay in the States. You file your paperwork wrong. All of a sudden you have 40 days, 30 days to be here. It's a time crunch. It's a very deep process where if you put the wrong thing, check the wrong box, all of a sudden you're denied, no questions asked, and the lawyer takes your money whether you're accepted or not. So we just said, once again, there has to be a better way for this. So we came up with a solution where any user can go on, fill out their information in really layman's terms. We then help generate their entire visa application in a really streamlined way. We automatically rate their success rate. If they have a low rate, we say, well, you're probably not going to get accepted and it's not your fault, but let's sign you up. So we built out an academy that teaches you how to properly fill out your forms. If you then apply a second time, say, okay, great, you have a good chance, or you apply the first time, we say you have a good chance. We automatically pair you with a entertainment immigration lawyer that at a fixed rate that will then be able to get the whole process done for you. And because we are streamlining the process, we're able to control the costs a lot more because now a lawyer has all the information filed the way they needed it the first time. So you're not wasting anybody's time now. You're just giving them the meat and potatoes to file, as opposed for them to spend hours and hours waiting back and forth and fishing for information. It's just a very clear process. So now, for example, I met at Berkeley. So many of my friends were international students. So all of a sudden you spend all this money, you spend 4 years in school, you want to work in the States, and all of a sudden your, scholastic visa ends. What do you do? All of a sudden you have to try and apply for an O1B visa and hope you make the cut or things like that. And it just became, it became so hurtful to see doing what they wanted to do because they were forced to leave because they couldn't get a lawyer in time. They couldn't fill out their application correctly. So we just said, enough of this. Let's fix this.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something not a lot of people realize, is that music is such like a worldwide industry. But again, all these different countries throughout the world have these different laws of who can come in, who cannot come in. So that's a really great thing you're working on, man.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited about that one. I think there's a lot to do. There's a lot more we have coming down now that the world is starting to awaken again. We're starting to get back into doing touring visas, for example. So, that's a huge problem too. If you go on tour in Europe, for example, one of the biggest things is every place you go, you need a visa. You need all this filed. You need the right thing. It all costs money. And so being able to help streamline those processes. So now all of a sudden you can get all of your paperwork done for a whole tour in a 20-30 minute spread, and then over the course of, a couple days or a week or two with your lawyer, just again makes it life that much easier. It takes,
Yeah. One more question for you. What is your favorite memory you have of your career so far?
That's a good question. No, I know what it is. I got and was very fortunate enough to watch Robert Plant perform. I was working at the time with a company called Homestead Amplifiers. I was helping them out, and we were at a festival, Lock-In Festival, and we were out a bunch of artists. They were under their roster, and we were able to sit in at Robert Plant's. The reason why you were there that whole time, and all of a sudden now you get to watch one of your heroes, is literally like I could reach my hand out and touch him kind of thing. And sitting backstage with watching him sing A Whole Lot of Love was just a very, I think I'm finally working in the music industry kind of moment. It was not I hope to do it one day. It was one of those very, this is real. Look what all the work you've been putting in, all those sleepless nights and all that work. Like, look where this is. And even though it was just as simple as watching the performance, it was just such a solidifying moment.
It's really cool. That's a really nice moment, man.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Zach, thanks for taking the time out of your really busy schedule for this interview today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate having me.
Of course. And we'll see you guys in the next Gear Guys episode. Catch you later. Hey guys. Welcome to the first installment of something that I like to call, What Is That Sound? Where I break out my keyboards and show you guys how to get some famous synthesizer sounds. Now for the first installment, I'm going to show you guys how to get one of the most iconic synthesizer sounds of all time. Literally the thing that when you start playing synthesizer, everyone asks you to play, and that is Jump by Van Halen. Let's jump into it. Get it? Okay, let's start over in the oscillator section. By the way, I am right now playing this on a Korg Minilog, the one analog synthesizer I have, but you can basically get this on any synthesizer that you play with. Okay, first, let's make sure we're on the initial patch. Cool. Now what we're going to do in the oscillator section is we're going to go set up 2 saw waves. Another common name for what this sound produced is a super saw. It's sort of a chorusy kind of saw wave, kind of like this. Hear that sort of chorus sound? Now we're going to add a little bit of a more chorusy effect to that by taking the sense tab of the 2 oscillators and separating them by, I like to do roughly 10. I think that sounds the best. Hear how the chorus sound gets a little bit heavier. Okay, next we're going to move over to the filter section. And this part is easy as well. We're just going to keep the filter all the way open and the resonance all the way down. You can hear it sort of start to get in there a little bit. See, it's almost there. And now on to the envelope generator section. This part's pretty basic as well. You're going to set the amp envelope generator to a basic on-off, which is no attack, no decay, no release, and maximum sustain. And you're going to set the normal envelope generator to the same exact thing. Because there's not really a lot of modulation in the sound other than that chorusy effect I was talking to you about. And here's what it sounds like this. Now that sounds great and everything, but really what kicks this sound into high gear is adding a little bit of chorus and a little bit of reverb to it. So let's do that. Okay, I just turned on the effects. Let me know how you guys think this sounds. Hope you guys enjoyed this installment of What Is That Sound, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.